Hello, this talk is about Project Caua and some ideas about products and integration. This talk is called the Project Caua Product Group. My name is John Maddog Hall. I'm the president of Linux International and also the founder of Project Caua. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I've been in the computer industry for 50 years. I have worked on all sorts of different systems, and in May of 1994 I met Linus Torvalds and convinced him to port the Linux kernel to the Alpha processor from Digital. I wanted to do this because I wanted to have a free software system with source code available that people could do research on very large address spaces. Over my 50-year period of time, I have come to realize that people don't really buy hardware and they don't buy software. Nobody sticks a computer board on the wall with a candle on either side like a shrine, unless, of course, it's Steve Wozniak. And nobody sticks a box of software on the wall with the candle on either side like a shrine, unless their name is Bill Gates or Larry Ellison. People buy solutions to problems. And let's say that the problem you have is playing a game. Well, if you could play that game with 2 tin cans and a string tied between them, you would. But it just so happens that computers and the internet are good at playing games, and so that's what you use. So, what is Project Caua? Well, about 12 years ago, I started to develop an idea for a business that a young person could start up using free software. And originally, the sub-goals of Project Caua were to make computers more efficient by retrofitting a lot of buildings, and instead of using very high energy usage computers, to use small, thin clients with server systems. But this ran into difficulty in trying to retrofit the old buildings with wiring and things to support them. So I put that aside and started to develop other ideas. And eventually I said, well, why not have a project that would help college students be able to afford university? In a lot of universities in Latin America and in Europe and around the world, federal and state universities are tuition free for qualified students. If they worked hard in their school, if they studied hard, then they could go to university for free. However, about 40% of the qualified students could not take advantage of this because the university was far from their home and they could not afford the apartment or the internet or the computers or the books or the food or the transportation, and so they had to turn down this opportunity. Some students would get what we call student jobs of waiting on tables or flipping hamburgers, but they still could not go to the university. And they were not studying to be hamburger cooks or waiters, they were studying computers. And so it would be better to have a job that could use the skills that they wanted to learn. So I came up with changing Project Caua to help computer-savvy students be able to earn enough money to be able to afford the things to go to university, and to teach them how to run their own company, how to form a service contract, how to advertise to people to tell them what their skills were, how to manage their own time between university and this job so they could do both of them. Most of the students already had the technical know-how, particularly if they wanted to study computer science or computer engineering. But what they didn't know was how to form that service contract, how to run the business. And they may not even know how to subcontract for other skills that they don't know, but which their customers need. And Project Caua could teach them that. So we started to build a website. We're still in the process of doing that. It's a 3-tier website. The topmost tier of it is across the program, around the world. It's going to be the same. It will show how the program works, what the benefits are to the students, what the benefits are to the business people, what the benefits are to the community, and to get people excited about the program. It also will loosely describe the products of the program that the students can sell and show people why they would want to have these products, these solutions. The next layer would be different country to country or perhaps language to language, culture to culture. This is about different languages for different parts of the world. Also, it would be on a country basis, making sure that the contracts that were formed were legal, that the advertising was effective in that particular culture, and it would also allow for tailoring of the products for a particular country consumption. Then finally, the bottom layer would have hundreds of parts of local groups, almost like lugs, that would allow the students to come together and share ideas, and also allow to have mentors to make the students, to show the students how the program worked, and to give them the encouragement and to go out and actually do the sales, make the jobs, and do well. They would also work with local businesses to be able to be accepting of these students coming to them and offering their services. Now, originally, Project Caua was going to only be service. There were not going to be any products or solutions to sell. And the students came to me and said, we would really like to have some products or some solutions that we could sell. So we rapidly came up with several good ideas, which we'll go over in greater detail later. But we feel that there's more that could happen, and that's one reason why we're having this BOF, is to come up with these ideas for additional products. Now, the first product we talked about is called ODOO. When you go to McDonald's, you go to the store, you see what is known as a point-of-sale terminal. At the store, it usually also has a scale to weigh the fruit or the vegetables. It has a scanner to scan in the barcodes. It has a printer to print out your receipts. It has a cashier to hold the money. And it has a reader that can read your credit card or something like that. And in addition, it has typically an LCD panel that you can see all this information on, and a keyboard and a mouse to enter additional things. Now, you can buy these from companies, professional companies like Oracle, and they cost thousands of dollars a piece, and they come with closed source software, so you can't change it or easily tailor the software. Or you can get an inexpensive single board computer like a Raspberry Pi, or in Brazil like the Labrador, which is part of Caninos Loucos. And you could put the ODOO software on that, and then you could plug in all these devices, and you have the same thing for typically hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. There's companies throughout the world that are already installing ODOO and supplying service to it. There's 9 companies alone in the country of Brazil. And I've talked with these companies, and they said, we would love to have students act as our first line of support to our customers, and we could act as second line of support for them. ODOO started out as a completely open software product. Over time, they started to close off a few of their modules because they said, well, these are specialized and they cost money to maintain. However, there is a group that has started in rewriting these closed source modules to make them open source again. And so we're stressing to have a completely free point of sale and ERP system. Now, the ERP system does customer management, it does inventory, it generates receipts and things like that. It's fairly complex. It's fairly hard to learn if you've never used one before. And this is something that the Project Caua professionals could sell, training, and support for that system for small business people. Another interesting service or solution is a small business or home NAS server. Many of you have these already, but the average homeowner, the average person has no idea what this is and how and what it could do for them. And you could create a very inexpensive NAS server utilizing a single board computer like the Raspberry Pi or like the Labrador, and putting maybe a SATA hat on top of it or some type of RAID configuration of this. And you could then use that to connect all of the different systems in the house to make it easy to do backup and exchange data and things like that. Freedom Box is a set of software that was started by Evelyn Moglin, the person who wrote GPL version 3. He's a lawyer. He's a professor at Columbia University. It is used to protect people from having to spread their personal data over all the other cloud systems. It comes with all the software you need to, in fact, set up your own cloud in your house, running on a single board computer, plugged into your wall. And you could even install federated services on top of it to allow people to exchange ideas and create their own microclouds. Kodi, I'm sure you're all familiar with, is a multimedia system that you can show videos, you can surf the web, you can do all sorts of things. And if you simply add 2 speakers to a single board computer, you can have a nice stereo system. If you add another larger amplifier, you could have surround sound 5.1 or 7.1. With the single board computer, you could make it into your own Wi-Fi hotspot and allow people who have no other connection to the internet to actually have a reasonable connection with a relatively slow speed internet. The Project Caua professionals would set this up. They would install it for them. They would set it up for local programming, make sure the customer knew how to use it, and then every once in a while they would come back and look at it to make sure it was working fine. Kodi could be extended to have a webcam sitting on top of the LCD screen, trained at a door, so that when the person leaves the house, they could turn it on, and any movement would take a picture and send it to the person so they could call the police and have the police go and see who's breaking into their house. You could set it up for voice over IP calling or web calling. You could use it to implement IoT for controlling lights and heat and things like that in people's homes. You could store data locally or set it up to have the data stored at a local ISP, encrypted so that people could trust them. And, incremental improvements in the Kodi functionality would allow the students to go back to their customers time and time again, perhaps to sell them some more training and some more information. You could also set up a multimedia laptop. This would be a portable media capturing device. Everybody is making, movies with their cell phones and stuff like that. But it's really hard to try and edit that movie on your cell phone while you're at the place. This little laptop could be a very inexpensive one. Would it capture that information, allow you to publish it while you're at the event, and it can be made out of an inexpensive laptop like the Pine 64. This could also be a meta package that you could put onto other maybe used laptops, so have a little bit more CPU power, but be less in cost. And it would be a beginning of being able to use FOSS to do these end user types of programs. So what Project Caua would do would be to do the initial integration of all these products to create and maintain a bill of materials, to create integration and installation scripts, to make sure that everything was GPL or Creative Commons in the development of this, and to publish this on our website. Now, people do not have to be associated with Project Caua to be able to see this information. All the information on the Project Caua website will be available to anybody. They will not even have to log in to the site to see it. Project Caua would create these kits on a country level and allow them to be sold to the students basically at cost. And the volume sales and the volume purchasing of the components would allow a differential between what Project Caua could buy the parts for and what the students could buy the parts for on an individual basis, so that the students would get them at the lowest possible cost, but at the same time, we would generate a little bit of money to be able to do the work of integration and legal things that have to be done with this. As an example, you may have to get SCC or Anatel or other types of radio certification for some of these products going out. That costs money. Now, these are all incremental functionality from the over 400,000 software products and projects which are out on places like SourceForge and GitHub and things like that. So we could take these various pieces of software and open hardware and with some imagination put them into products that anybody could sell, and particularly these students. Now, I have experienced this before. I have given young people the information. One time I gave a guy a Red Hat CD and a copy of Matt Welch's Running Linux, and he built an entire file and print server for his family. It tied together their Apple notebooks, their PCs and stuff. And after a couple of months, his father called me up and said, "What did you do to my son? He is doing so much better in school. He's happier. He has confidence in himself." I said, I didn't do anything, right? I just showed him how he could be his own person. And there have to be more than just a few devices which I have shown here. And that's where I need your help. I need you to help me think of them, put together some rough plans for how they could go together, and some justification for how they could be sold to end users, whether it's small business people, or whether it be homeowners, or whether it be government. And we can put those up on the Project Caua website. So please help with ideas and with perhaps integration. Here's my email address. If you send me some email, please put in the subject line, Ideas and Integration, or Project Caua, Ideas and Integration, so I can filter it properly and make sure I see it. And thank you very much. That's the end of the talk. I'll be happy to ask and answer any questions.
Thanks a lot, maddog. It was a great talk. So now let's go to the questions and answers. The first one is, when will the website be up?
We are working on that, and we're getting very close. So, it probably will be about a month now, but I'm having some funding that's coming from the Linux Professional Institute, and they are going to help to give me a person that can do a real nice website. We're going to be using standard open source software. It's not going to be any closed products or anything like that. So it's probably going to be about a month to have the website set up the way I want to. We don't have to have the entire website set up. I mean, the uppermost level is actually done. We have certain videos on there. The videos have been translated into English, Portuguese, and Spanish. We intend on doing other translations. We have several videos up there that describe the product, describe the program, describe what we're trying to do. The middle level is done for a couple of countries, Brazil and Argentina. What we want to do is do more countries, after we get through kind of like a prototyping situation, so that we can point to them and say, look, it does work. We have done this before. I've had students do part-time jobs trying to get through university by, basically running their own companies. But they used a break and fix policy, which is somebody's computer breaks, they bring it to the student fixes it, gives it back to them. And the problem with that methodology is it doesn't generate a set of, or a flow of cash that comes into the student on a regular basis. I mean, sometimes there might be a couple weeks go past without some customers bring some stuff in. Sometimes they bring them in all at once, and maybe that's the time you're having examinations, stuff like that, so you don't have the time to work on them. By having a service contract, it gives you more of a chance to balance your time, to control your time, and also to know that you're going to be getting a certain amount of money every month. We recommend that the students have about 6 or 7 customers, and if they're business customers, and they spend 4 hours a week with each business customer, looking at their systems, checking log files, seeing if they have viruses and spam on them, helping the customer, straighten their systems out. And in addition, they would be selling these types of services. Go to the small business person that may be looking to have some additional point-of-sale terminals and use ODOO to implement those. I've talked with a lot of, to give you an idea, ODOO is sold and installed around the world. And basically it's an international organization, and they're basically installing about 1,000 ODOO systems every day. In some part of the world, it's other, they're installing systems, and on the average, they install 1,000 systems. If we were to get the students to do this, they might install 2,000 systems a day. And that would generate a lot of money and stuff for the students to earn to be able to go to university.
Great. Our next question is, which countries you are at and how I can start in?
Okay, so the first, the 2 countries that we're starting first is Brazil and Argentina. The reason I chose Brazil is because there's another part of this, which is called Caninos Loucos. In Brazil, if you try and buy a Raspberry Pi, you'll find out that you probably will pay $150 for it, street price. The reason for that is that the $35 Raspberry Pi, it costs about $20 to have it shipped to Brazil, $5 of insurance. So that's a total of $60. As soon as it gets to customs in Brazil, they double that. They have 100% duty. So the system now costs $120. And by the time a company adds a little bit of profit to it, it's $150. About 5 years ago, we started to design and manufacture systems inside of Brazil. This lowers the customs duties considerably, and basically you can have a much better system at a much lower cost. So in most of the world, we will be using Raspberry Pi with Debian on it. In Brazil, and in Argentina and Uruguay, we probably would be using what we call the Labrador with Debian on it. And I'm choosing Debian because it's got the largest number of packages. It has probably the best support across architectures, and why not? So that's why we chose those 2 countries. However, there's no reason why people couldn't look at the website and say, well, I'd like to try this in my country. So there's 2 main things you need. Number 1, you need to have a contract which is legal in your country. A contract that has all the things your country needs for a service contract or a product contract if you're selling something. And the second thing is you need a piece of advertising. You need advertising which is tuned to your country. As an example of that, one time Digital had a TV ad they made where they dressed up chimpanzees in clothes like people and, used that to advertise their services. And it turns out that in one of the cultures of the world, a chimpanzee dressed up like a human being is incredibly insulting. So that particular advertisement was absolutely no use in that country. I mean, if you're going into Africa, one thing that has always bothered me, you go into Africa for a long time and you look at the bulletin boards, the billboards, and they would have Caucasians on them. Not black people. And I said, this is terrible. Why are they doing this? So you want to tune your marketing materials to your customers. And each country would do that on a country level. They would make the advertising so that the student could fill in their name, their contact information, things like that. The other thing the student has to do is to figure out what skills they have that they want to offer to their customers. Now, I know, and I've done this to some DebConf people. I said, okay, who fixes the computers in your house? Of course, every DebConf person raises their hand, right? They are the person that everybody in their house comes to when their computer doesn't work. They fix the computers on everybody on the whole street. So the problem is that you can't really charge your mother for fixing her computer. She's the person that gave birth to you. She's the person that, wiped your butt when it was dirty. You can't charge her. But you could charge other people for fixing their computers. And the question comes to a lot of these students, what do I know? You take somebody who's 14, 15, 16 years old, and they say, I don't know anything. Oh, yes, you do. You know how to install a new disk drive. You know how to install a new version of the operating system. You know how to put in patches. And what you don't know how to do, you do know how to go to the internet and find information you need. So what you have to do is help these students realize the things that they can do, and that is what they put into their contract. They say to the customer, these are the things I will do for you, and I will come in every week and be sure these things are done. And your system will work better if I do them. If something comes up, the students don't know how to do it, what the Project Caua site will give them is a way to ask for help, a way to find other people in their area that can do that particular thing, and do what we call subcontracting, where the student will say to their customer, this wasn't in our contract, this is extra things, it has to be done, and you're going to have to pay extra so that these things can be done. And business people will understand that. So these are the types of things that have to be done on a country level. We've already got the contract for Brazil. We're working on the contract for Argentina. It probably will be much the same for Uruguay, because the contract, it needs to be in your native language. You can't give a person in Brazil a contract in English and expect them to be happy about it. So you have to translate to Portuguese, and there are various laws that have to be done in the contract, and various things that have to be done to make it legal. We have to have a lawyer check that out. So this is what we have to do on a country-by-country basis. And what we would like to do is, on a very local basis, find mentors that would help the students, make the first sale. I've been in business doing things for over 50 years. I've sold brushes door to door. I've sold cleaning supplies door to door. I've cooked hamburgers. I've done all sorts of jobs. And getting that first job, go to that first customer, is hard. So what we want the mentors to do is to help them. We want the mentors to be already successful people who can help the students make that first sale. And once you've made that first sale, then you know you can do it, and you can make a second sale and a third sale. After a while, I want the students themselves to be mentors to new students coming in. So we're looking for mentors And we think we're going to be able to get mentors from the Financial Aid Office of the university, from the Better Business Bureau or Kiwanis Club or something like that, the Lions Club. Business clubs that are there in the local area, explain the program to them, and ask them if they would be willing to be a mentor for the students. Remember, these mentors are not teaching them the technical part. What the mentors are helping them understand is the business part. How do you run your business? Therefore, the mentors really don't have to know much about computers at all. What they really have to know is, how do you reach out to the business people, to the customers in that area to be able to sell your services and your solutions to?
Great. Now we have a comment from Jonathan Carter, High Voltage. I tried to do something similar to this in 2003, where I want to teach senior year kids about things that they could do with Linux to make money after they leave school. Thanks for sharing. I hope this gets traction. And we have another question. Is Caninos Loucos available to buy it currently? Could you tell us more about that project, please?
Okay, so let me talk about Jonathan's comment first, and then we'll get to Caninos Loucos. I know I've tried this several times. As I said, I've actually been working on Project Caua for 12 years. But back in 2003, it was very early. There was only about 30,000 projects that were available on places like SourceForge. Today, there are 400,000. The single-board computers back in 2003 were not as plentiful or as cheap. The Raspberry Pi cost $35 in most places. So, things have changed. And even though we may have tried it at an earlier time, to try it again and to be able to pull in more people to work on this would be, it may work spectacularly. If it doesn't, I'll put it aside. I'll work on it again in another 20 years. So I'll treat the Caninos Loucos, and then I'll come back to, okay, so he added, yes, he thinks it would certainly be easier now than back then. It's true. Caninos Loucos. We started Caninos Loucos probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and the first idea was to simply go to the Raspberry Pi Association and say, would you allow us to manufacture the Raspberry Pi in Brazil? We would buy all of the parts from the Raspberry Pi, which would help them because that would increase the number of parts that they could purchase from from their suppliers, give them greater discounts. And we would make sure that they could test our Raspberry Pis from time to time to make sure they were compatible with their Raspberry Pis. We worked on this for 2 years. We actually built 10 Raspberry Pis in Brazil, 5 of them at the University of Sao Paulo and 5 of them at a boutique manufacturing plant in Curitiba, Brazil. We showed them the Raspberry Pi people. We said, can we do this? And they said no. They never told us why. They just said no. So we then went to another company in China, made a deal with them. We did a redesign of their board to following most of the things they had. And now we are about to go into manufacture of these. It's been like next week for the better part of a year. And it's a little frustrating for me, but, we're getting close. In the meantime, the Raspberry Pi has been becoming better, and the quantities that you could get them in Brazil have been increasing. So we could actually make sure that these projects and solutions work with both of them. And as the Labrador comes out, we could then switch over to the Labrador to have a less expensive product. So there's no reason not to start this. And the other thing is, there's really no reason why you can't make this out of, say, an Intel single-board computer that has the same capabilities. It's the same software. You would have to have different peripherals, perhaps. But, you could look at that as a thing. The idea, however, is to give somebody who's fairly technical, the Project Caua professional, the Project Caua student, first of all, the idea of what they're going to sell, the marketing and advertising materials for that solution, and some technical help to put it together so that they can then buy the parts and take it out to the customers.
Okay, we have another question. Were other more false-friendly boards than Raspberry Pi, for instance, Big One Black, for which you can easily get licensing to build a clone? Do you consider that?
There's lots of different boards out there, and I would be happy to have any one of them as long as it meets the criteria of creating the solution. If you remember, I started off this talk by saying that people don't buy hardware and they don't buy software. They buy a solution. So you really don't care what computer is inside your Samsung TV, your Samsung Smart TV. You just want to be able to turn it on, and it's a smart TV. Likewise, I really don't care what is inside of the Project Caua system as long as it does everything it's supposed to. The nice thing about selling a solution is that the solution has a price. The solution has a cost. The solution has a value. And part of that is the cost of the single board computer. So, you can have a single board computer that's a little bit more expensive than the cheapest one, and you hide that inside the cost of the solution. I told you that point-of-sale terminals are available from places like Oracle and Micronesis, and they sell for about $3,000 a piece. The worst part is, that's not the worst part. The worst part is they're closed. And every time you go to buy a new terminal, you need a new piece of software. That software could cost you $30,000 US. And you're stuck because you bought that first system. So using something like ODOO, which is open, it allows you to substitute other types of hardware, and it also allows you to tailor the software to meet the needs of your customers. And if we have enough customers who would like to have a particular piece of software changed, as a group, they could fund that change and pay some of the students some real money for programming and things like that. If the students are not capable of doing that, we can take it to some of these companies that do it. So, that's why I'm emphasizing the solution part of this. We had a comment earlier in the session about TV tuners. I can't remember the name of the company. I dealt with them recently, and they have USB TV tuners that cover every frequency and TV type in the world. So there's about 3 or 4 major ones. The one that's being used in Latin America right now is, I believe, USB-T, and they have one of those. And in any case, there are either USB connectors or things that fit into the Raspberry Pi GPIO pins that would allow you to have over-the-air TV. And this would be very valuable to people who live in cities where there are still over-the-air TV channels. So that's another thing that we could add to the Kodi system.
Great. We have another question. Have you ever thought about Olimex as a cooperation partner for your free software and hardware projects?
I've looked at that, and I'm not the only person that's in charge of Caninos Loucos, okay? There's, it's being run by the University of Sao Paulo, actually a branch of theirs called LSI Tech. And so far, they've been producing the systems they have, the surface mount technology machine. I'm, I'd be happy to talk to anybody about their hardware solution or things, or if they say, hey, I have a solution that's completely open, and is this something that your Project Caua professionals would like to sell? I'm certainly ready to listen to them. In the end, it's not even going to be my decision. This is not, I'm the person who started the project, but the thing is that this is actually the project of the students. The idea here is that these students, we're probably going to reach out to students which are in high school, which is what we're doing right now. The students that are in Argentina are in last year of their high school. We're getting them used to Project Caua. We're getting them, trained with business parts so that when they go, in the summer between their high school and they start university, they're going to be able to start selling their services and stuff to their customers and be ready for when they go to university. When they go to university, they're going to be moving away from their home that they have been living in. They're going to be moving to where the university is. And what will happen is they'll start to develop their customers where the university is. We want the students to have very local customers, as much as possible around the area that the students are living or around the area that the university is. That way the students can walk to their customers, when they go home or on Saturdays or Sundays, or they can walk to where their customers are from the university. They don't have to travel a long distance to get to their customers. So this is a very localized type of thing, with each student having maybe 6 or 7 customers that they spend 4 hours a week with. And that should be enough money to pay for their apartment, their food, their internet, and stuff like that. After they leave university, they will have a going business. They're going to leave. They're probably going to move some other place. They can't really take their business with them. They could start a new one wherever they're going, it's fine. And a bigger one if they want, that's fine. But they can't take it with them. So what they should do is turn this over to another student who's going to the university. Maybe a student is going to take over their apartment. And that student would then have a going business that they could make money from. And that way the customers have an ongoing service for them that doesn't stop just because their student moved away, just because the student graduated. So this is an ongoing project for the students, and it's their project. I'm just here to try and get it started, to help to form the structure, and to use my experience in 50 years of doing this type of stuff to help them get going.
Perfect. So we have a final comment. Let's wait for be completed. Okay, so we develop an open source hardware device for students to learn electronics at FOSS Asia community at the link pslab.io. we would like to see if we can collaborate with Project
Okay.
Project Caua.
Okay. I'd be happy to take a look at that. But if you're talking about a device that helps students learn electronics, there's actually another project I'm working on that would probably fit in better. And this is a project to take the IEEE ACM computer engineering curriculum and teach it completely using open source and open hardware. So there are 340 universities around the world that use that curriculum as their curriculum. They do this because it's easy to get certification. You base your curriculum on something like that. But unfortunately, that curriculum is typically taught using closed source software and proprietary hardware. So my project is to make this as easy as possible to teach that curriculum with open source software and open source hardware. I can give you, again, this is a project that is just starting up. I have, again, I'm having support on this from the Linux Professional Institute. So if you send me some email and you say on that IEEE/ACM as the subject line, we can talk about that particular project.
Wonderful, maddog. Thank you very much for the talk and all you have shared with us.
So I'm giving one more talk tomorrow. And this talk is kind of pulling a lot of these different things together. And it's also about what I feel is a very important thing where everybody talks about capitalism, but the problem with capitalism is you have a boss and then you have employees. And so I want to see people be their own boss. I want to see people have control over their own job and cut out the middle layers to that, that don't add to it. So I'll be talking about that tomorrow.
Thank you for your invitation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And if you're interested in more about Project Caua, or, you're welcome to send me some email. And on that, you would say, subject line Project Caua, and I will put you into a mailing list, and you can opt out anytime you want to. And Project Caua is completely free. I'm never going to ask any money from the students unless they're actually buying something of value. So eventually we may sell professional insurance. So if you have a problem, let's say you completely burn down your customer's building, the insurance would pay for that, right? So we might have an insurance contract that we could offer you that would be very low cost, and that's something you'd have to pay for. Or if you want to buy one of these packages from Project Caua instead of buying all the parts yourself, that's something you have to pay for. But you would not be paying for anything from Project Caua itself.
Thanks a lot, maddog.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming.